Peace and love, family. Today is a very special day. We are doing a celebration of life, birthday Ghanaian dish called oto or eto.
Wanyama kalu, tababa wali.
Hello and welcome to wherever you are around the world. This is Health Watch Thursdays here at New Body, New Earth Health Foods. I'm your host for this particular evening's event or this particular evening's episode, Dr. Carnita Groves. And I have been in the psychology profession for some time. And in fact, a total of 46 years I've been doing counseling. And from all the way prior to academic training, during and after academic training and credentialing. And apparently I need to take speech lessons to learn how to talk this evening. So the topic for this evening is strengthening mental health. Maybe the topic should be strengthening speech, but the topic this evening is going to be strengthening mental health. And I'm going to be going over several segments of this with you. And bear with me, I have some notes, so I'll just be looking down at my notes and sort of reflecting. So this is going to be really organic. If it's a polished, professional, all shiny kind of a presentation that you're looking for, I think you could tell already this is not going to be that one. This is just going to be sit back and relax, and I'm just going to share some information with you about strengthening mental health. Now, the information that I'm going to share with you this evening about strengthening mental health is not just things that are taught in academia or things that can be learned when you're getting a certain type of certification or licensure for something. Those things are there, and that's all fine and good. But a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about with you this evening are things that I've myself done and that I've also done with my patients throughout the years, and with feedback from them as well as things that I observe in them, I can see the evidence of the types of things that I'm going to be talking about this evening. And I'll throw in examples and scenarios and things of that sort throughout, just to help the information make a little bit more sense to you. Now, who is this for? Who's this information for? This information is for primarily, first and foremost, just the average person. Just somebody who's just really concerned about their mental well-being. And maybe you have thought about what can you do to kind of strengthen yourself mentally. Maybe you've noticed that you probably could step up a little bit in terms of how strong you are, how sharp you are mentally. Maybe some of you have noticed some memory issues. Maybe some of you have difficulty focusing and concentrating, or whatever the issue may be. Brain fog is a very common complaint in certain parts of the world. And so maybe that's something that you're noticing. Whatever the case may be, you may have noticed something that has caused you to say, yeah, I think I need to kind of pay a little attention to my mind or to my brain. So this is for you. This is for the layperson. Second to that, if you are a mental health professional, a medical professional, some other form of social scientist, or some other type of scientist, then definitely lend an ear, lend your expertise down in the comments. And speaking of comments, definitely be sure to click like and subscribe. All right, so let's get into strengthening mental health. I'm gonna cover, how many is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 main categories, and then I'm gonna go back and go a little bit deeper with each one. So here are the 6 categories. When we're talking about strengthening mental health, we're talking about cognitive stamina, we're talking about psychological resilience, we're talking about emotional intelligence, we're talking about heart and brain coherence, we're talking about gut-brain coherence, and then we're talking about person, community, and environment coherence. Okay, so let me go over those again. Cognitive stamina, psychological resilience, emotional intelligence, heart and brain coherence, gut-brain coherence, and then the person, community, and environment coherence. And these are some of the fundamentals that make up what we call or describe as strengthening mental health. These are major components of it. All right, so let's get into it. Now I'm going to break this down into 2 categories. I'm going to break it down to activity category and the consumption category. And as I get further into this, it's definitely going to make sense to you why I'm doing that, provided I don't stammer too much. All right, so cognitive stamina may be a little bit self-explanatory, but let me kind of say a little bit more about that. Cognitive stamina is the ability to mentally stay with a given situation, whether it's a conversation, whether it's a lecture, whether it's a movie, whether it's some type of event going on in your community, in your household, at your workplace. Cognitive stamina is the type of thing that allows you mentally to endure, to have mental endurance. And this is what we would refer to as cognitive stamina. So I want you to picture, if you're sitting in a lecture. You sat down in a chair, the lecture is 3 hours long. And if you have really good cognitive stamina, you're able to stay awake and stay alert throughout that entire lecture. It doesn't mean that there might not be some minor distractions here and there. Someone sneezing, maybe something falling to the floor and making a noise, maybe a door closing a little bit loudly and making a noise. But whatever it is, it's a minor distraction, and you are able to maintain your cognitive stamina and stay with that situation. If it's another type of situation, so let's say you're in a intense meeting, let's call it a board meeting, and you're in this board meeting and you're discussing very intense issues, pressing issues, you're able to stay with it. You're not going to throw in a towel and say, you know what, I can't take this anymore, and get up and walk out and go take a break or smoke a cigarette or something. You're going to be able to cognitively or mentally stay with it. So those are a couple of examples that I would like to share with you when it comes to cognitive stamina. Now, believe it or not, there are things that we can consume that can help with cognitive stamina, but there's also physical things we can do that can also lend itself toward boosting cognitive stamina. Now, one of the things you might already be able to guess, and that is you probably don't want to eat a lot of simple carbs, and you probably don't want to consume white sugar, high fructose corn syrup, sucrose, all of those types of things as a way to keep you alert, so to speak, because those things do not lend themselves toward cognitive stamina. In fact, if you want to crash and burn, you'll take some sugary type of drink or some very, very simple carbs, which your body will treat as sugar, or a juice that doesn't have much fiber or pulp in it, or a smoothie that perhaps has way too many high sugary fruits in it, okay? And these things are not gonna lend themselves toward cognitive stamina. However, things that do lend themselves toward cognitive stamina would be protein, and in particular, since we are where we are, I would say vegetable protein in particular can lend themselves toward cognitive stamina. If you're not a vegan or a vegetarian, things like eggs or fish, high protein foods, animal products can lend themselves toward cognitive stamina. But you can also look at certain types of oils, healthy oils that can lend themselves toward cognitive stamina. Seeds and nuts, particularly if they're soaked, properly soaked before consumption, can also help lend themselves toward cognitive stamina. Fiber, fiber-rich foods. If you have a smoothie, let's say you're doing a vegetable smoothie, and the vegetables that you're using have a lot of fiber in them, such as carrots and beets and celery, you can, again, help to boost cognitive stamina with these types of things. Now, let's look at the activity that can help lend itself toward cognitive stamina. Overall, as a rule, having an active lifestyle can lend itself toward cognitive stamina. Having an active lifestyle. Does this mean you have gym membership? No, not necessarily. Having an active lifestyle is pretty much as it means. It means that you're active. You're not at any one point in time being sedentary, just sitting for hours and hours, days in and days out. If you're very, very, very active and there's a day or two or three in a month where you're really not doing much, you really shouldn't have to worry. But if it's the other way around, where throughout the month there's a day or two or three where you're active and the rest of your month you're not, that is not going to lend itself toward cognitive stamina. The activity is too low, and you're not going to create the proper physical conditions that come from being active that's going to lend itself toward cognitive stamina. Now, under activity, also I brought down a few categories because these categories are really important. Under activity comes sleep, rest, and let me see, sleep, rest, and what else do I have here? Oh, okay, that's what I had. Activity, sleep, and rest. Those are the three. I thought I had added another one. I told you this wasn't going to be all shiny and polished. So with the activity, you want an active lifestyle that may or may not include going to the gym. You just need to be up and about and doing things that throughout your day, certainly throughout your week, is going to cause you to be a little bit out of breath. It's definitely going to cause you to break a sweat. So whether it's mopping, dusting, vacuuming, painting, whatever it is, gardening, whatever it is that's going to get that heart rate up, your body will count that as activity. Your body does not know the difference between whether you're at the gym or whether you're doing laundry. Activity is activity. The other thing is rest. Rest is going to lend itself toward cognitive stamina. Why? Because while you are sleeping, there are over 700 processes that are taking place during the sleep phases, the various sleep phases throughout the night. And if you're not getting enough sleep, good quality sleep, it is definitely going to interfere with your cognitive capacity and with your cognitive stamina. In fact, not getting adequate sleep will interfere with literally everything about you. That's not good news. Sleep is very, very important, quality sleep. And yes, there are sleep coaches who specialize in helping people deal with these. And then the other thing is calming. So in addition to sleep, and in addition to resting, which would be things like meditation, going for a nice little stroll, reading a non-upsetting, non-intense book would be something that is calming. You want something that at the end of the day, when you're in that rest period, somewhere throughout the day, definitely throughout your week, you're doing something, you're not asleep, you're not doing a physical activity, something that's got you active, but you are doing something that is calming. Maybe it is crocheting or knitting, maybe it is pruning some few flowers or something in the garden, nothing too strenuous. Maybe it's daydreaming, maybe it's people watching, but something that's very calming. These things sort of bring calm and sort of turn the volume down on all the activity that's going on in your brain. So these are some things about cognitive stamina with respect to activity and with respect to consumption that's going to be important. Let me say a little bit more about the consumption piece. Under consumption is not only the things that we put in our bodies, but it includes water and it includes sunlight. Yes, sunlight. It's as though our skin and our eyes are consuming sunlight, are eating sunlight. It's absorbed into the eyes, it's absorbed into the skin directly where the body literally uses it. So I'm going to include that under consumption. But consumables also include, as much as you can, a whole food plant-based diet. You want to consume things when it's on your plate, you want it to, as much as possible, look the way it did when it was harvested. Now, if you have a weakness for mashed potatoes like I do, you might not be able to tell that a pile of mashed potatoes on your plate is this object that came from the garden. So there are some foods that are a little bit more processed than others, but are still nonetheless in their true form. So if you're eating carrots, for instance, you can easily identify a carrot and can see that it's the same thing that is there in the ground. The same is true for if you're eating grapes. The same is true if you're eating bananas. The same is true if you're eating a salad, especially. All those things that go in a really nice raw vegetable salad or a nice fruit salad clearly look like how they did when they were at harvest. Some things may take a little bit more to recognize, like my blessed mashed potatoes, but you get the point. A whole food plant-based diet, as much as you can, is the way to go. That's going to go a long way toward helping to boost cognitive stamina. You're going to get, if you're eating raw foods throughout the week and throughout the day, you're going to get micronutrients, nutrients, you're going to get probiotics, you're going to get prebiotics, you're definitely going to get postbiotics. And you really are going to be able to give your brain a boost by doing that. You're also getting the electricity or the chi that's in that food. You're getting the oxygen that is in that raw food. Now, when foods are cooked, of course, you're going to lose a lot of that, but you're still going to get some other vitamins and minerals and fibrous benefit. So those are the things that have to do with consumption where whole food plant-based diet is concerned. If you will not absolutely let go of any meat of any kind, that's your business. We're all adults. Well, perhaps not all of us watching this are adults, but you know, you get to do what you want to do. But the rule of thumb is to make sure when you are looking at the dish in front of you that has your meat of choice on it, you need to make sure that the vegetables far outnumber the meat. You need to make sure that the vegetables far outnumber the meat, okay? And that is going to really get you a step ahead of the game. Now, let's talk a little bit about water. Water is very, very important. You can get it from your fruits and vegetables, especially if you are eating them raw. In fact, those of you who eat a lot of raw foods and fruits and vegetables, you may notice that your craving or your desire for just drinking water outright goes down. This is because the H3O that is in the fruits and vegetables that you are ingesting is really sort of overtaking the H2O that you are taking that's in a container that you're drinking. And so again, these things lend themselves toward cognitive stamina, because if you are dehydrated, if your blood gets too thick, it's too viscous because you're chronically dehydrated, you're not going to have a lot of cognitive stamina. It's going to directly, absolutely affect you. So it's very, very important. Hydration is huge. There are a lot of people out there who would argue that there's only one form of disease, and it comes from chronic dehydration. You may disagree with that, but it is a prominent school of thought that's out there, but it just lets you know just how important water or hydration is. Sunlight, again, can't emphasize the importance of sunlight. If you do a search online or on some social media platforms regarding the health benefits of sunlight, you will be amazed. Prepare to be amazed. There's not enough time literally in this 1 hour presentation to go over all of the different types of benefits that are accorded you when you allow yourself to get sunlight. How much sunlight? How long? Well, it depends on how dark your complexion is, how much melanin you have in your skin. The more melanin you have in your skin, the more sunlight, the more time you'll need to spend in the sun. Now, not only that, but how much clothing are you wearing? Are you covered from head to toe, hands and feet, and everything is included? Well, it's going to take you longer to get the vitamin D that you needed than if you have a tank top and some short sun and you're out in the midday sun. You're going to be able to absorb and suck in what you need a lot faster. But suffice it to say, sunlight is huge, it's very, very important, and it absolutely is directly tied to being able to strengthen mental health. All right, so let me move on to the psychological resilience part, because this too is a big part of it. Now, you may be thinking, what's the difference between cognitive stamina and psychological resilience? Psychological resilience is the big picture. It's the emotions and the intellect, and in some ways, some would argue the behavior, all combined into one. But in particular, the mental and the emotional all combined into one. And you want that resilience. You want that bounce back. You want that be able to, at will, on command, with a little bit of an effort, achieve desirable mood states. If there's a big problem in your life that's upset you, you want to be able to come up off of that and not get stuck on it, not get hung up on it, not get trapped in by it. If there's a good thing that's going on, you want to be able to prolong that good thing and extend that moment of joy, that moment of bliss, that moment of peacefulness, that moment of happiness, that burst of excitement. You want to be able to attain it with ease, and you want to be able to prolong it when you experience it, and you want to be able to create it on command. These are the types of things that we're talking about when we're talking about psychological resilience. It's the ability to be able to bounce back. It's the ability to be able to just kind of hang in there and maintain in spite of and in light of whatever may be going on. And again, much of the same thing, the activities, including sleep and rest and calming types of behaviors, are there where psychological resilience is concerned. And consumption, including sunlight and water, are also very important where psychological resilience is concerned. Now, one of the distinctions here that you can add to psychological resilience is to be able to have someone to talk to. And this has been my logo in my private practice from day one, which is it helps to have someone to talk to. And it really does. The research shows over and over and over again that when you have someone that you believe that it is safe for you to confide in, that it's safe for you to say what you want to say, how you need to say it, when you have that as a part of your life, whether you use it occasionally, rarely, or frequently, that is huge when it comes to strengthening mental health. In fact, this is one of, and I'll mention the other part later, the person, community, and environment piece, but the psychological resilience is definitely tied into that, because we are not islands unto ourselves. We don't do well when we are isolated. And I think we learned that some few years ago when we were told to isolate and shelter in place. We are now seeing all of the research that's pouring forth that shows just how problematic that type of being isolated from each other was. And so we need each other's company. We need to see each other's face. We need to see each other smiling. We need to hear each other laughing. We need to be able to vibe off of each other's electricity or vibrational frequency. We need to see the good behaviors that are modeled. We need to see the calmness. Think about it. Most of the time, the vast majority of the time, most people are in a fairly calm space. Rarely, unless you are in a land of war, where there's war going on right now, and unfortunately there are those who are in that very place. But unless you are in a war-ridden war zone, you will in all likelihood step out your door to general peace. People are generally peaceable. If you're on public transportation, people are generally peaceable. You do not regularly have someone threatening your life, threatening your person, roughing you up, doing all these types of things. You're not frequently seeing fights and armed robberies and muggings. You vast majority of the people, the most of the time, are in a state of general calm and peaceableness. And this is extremely important for us to be able to experience on a regular basis when it comes to strengthening mental health. So psychological resilience is that ability to be able to bounce back. And guess what lends itself toward being able to do that? Activity and sleep and rest and calming exercises. And definitely what we consume, including sunlight and water. These things lend themselves toward our being able to achieve and maintain psychological resilience. All right, so it may sound like I'm rushing through things a little bit, but I kind of sort of am, because I don't have a clock around so I can kind of pace myself with the time. So bear with me. All right, so emotional intelligence is something that I'm sure a lot of us have heard of as a formal thing, right? As a thing that people are doing at clinics and hospitals, and there are now some schools in certain parts of the world that has even included it as a part of their part of the curriculum. But back in the day, before this became a catchphrase and before this became a buzzword, our elders, our parents, our grandparents exuded emotional intelligence. They exuded that. They didn't use those exact words per se. However, the things that they taught us and the things that they modeled for us most of the time really did have to do with emotional intelligence, showing us how to be tough in a situation, even at times telling us, don't cry, or don't you dare laugh, or whatever the case may be. They were doing all types of things to help strengthen us emotionally. They were, through their own lives, through their own endurance, through their own dogged stamina, really showing us, without specifically telling us, about emotional intelligence, the way that they handled being criticized, the way that they handled being corrected, the way that they handled being confronted, the way that they handled being praised and complimented, the way that they handled flirtation, the way that they handled temptation. Okay? Again, most people, most of the time, did a pretty good job with this. And these are ways and forms of emotional intelligence. And so again, when it comes to activity and when it comes to consumption, this again plays into it. Let's face it, if you are just really in a bad space health-wise because of what you've been consuming or what you've not been consuming, and if you lead a very sedentary lifestyle, I promise you it's going to be difficult for you to attain high levels of emotional intelligence and especially stay there. Now, there's one particular activity that is very popularly known for boosting emotional intelligence and boosting cognitive intelligence, or IQ, and that is super brain yoga. And you can see it all over social media. Medical doctors are teaching it to other doctors, they're teaching it to their patients. I'm gonna say it again, super brain yoga is one of those things. It's so simple to do, it's free, it's easy, and it has literally been shown to boost IQ and to help boost emotional intelligence. So again, under the activity issue, these things are very important, and of course, under the consumption, including sunlight and water, these things are very important. Heart and brain coherence is kind of a new thing. No one was talking about heart and brain coherence 40 years ago, 60 years ago, just like emotional intelligence. However, heart and brain coherence is a thing. We're just now realizing it's a thing, and now we've given it a label, and that popular label is heart and brain coherence. And putting it really simple, heart and brain coherence has to do with the way in which your heart and your brain interact with each other efficiently, and they do interact. Everything interacts with your brain, and your brain interacts with everything. So heart and brain coherence, there again are activities and interventions all over social media. If you type in those words, that will give you specific techniques, specific interventions, and can lead you to a ton of mind-boggling research. If you're of the research type, the kind who wants to know, the nuts and bolts behind the scenes, you can look up information on heart and brain coherence. Dr. Joe Dispenza is one of the very popular people on social media today that's talking about it, but he's not the only one. But he does do a considerable amount of presentation and research and publications on heart and brain coherence. Again, he's not the only one, but he is one of the forerunners of heart and brain coherence. And it's very important when it comes to strengthening mental health. I think it may be obvious why, but let me just kind of go into the obvious a little bit. So think about how powerful your heart is. Think about the way you have been with your heart and matters of the heart throughout your life. And now think about how important your brain is, and how the way that you think and the way that you perceive and the way that you are able to plan and organize things, right? Think about how important that has been throughout your life. And now think about bringing the two together and having them operate in a very harmonious way. And when they come together in a very harmonious way, they create a type of synergy that goes a long way toward very dynamically strengthening mental health. So heart and brain coherence are very, very critical. Now, some interesting things about the heart, and that is, one of the things that we know affects the health of the heart is dental health. Yes, your mouth. The plaque that's on your teeth correlates to the plaque that's in your arteries, and this affects your heart. And so good dental hygiene is important for good heart health, but good brain health is important for good heart health. Activity, of course, is important for good heart health. The heart is a muscle, and it's going to be important that that muscle stays robust and strong. So activity is going to be important for that, including sleep and rest and calming exercises, as well as consumption, including sunlight and water. Very important when it comes to heart and brain coherence and strengthening mental health. All right, the gut-brain, I'm gonna call it gut-brain coherence, but the gut-brain relationship, this has to do with the gut microbiome and the brain microbiome, and they are very, very, very important. The gut microbiome and the brain microbiome. And I just remembered one other thing that I want to remember, so I'm gonna write that down right quick. See, you're getting an organic presentation. So the gut and brain microbiome, when you begin to talk about a microbiome, you're almost always talking about nutrients and nutrition, because that's what's going on there. That's what's going on. When you're talking about a microbiome, you're talking about microbes. And when you're talking about microbes, you're talking about what they are consuming. You're talking about the population. You're talking about the balance and the dynamics of that population, the ratio of good flora to bad flora, the diversity. Do you have a small diversity? Do you have a huge diversity of a healthful, health-enhancing microbiome in your gut and in your brain? So how does this happen? Of course, nutrition is a very big one. But guess what else? When it comes to the brain, and of course when it comes to the heart, but breathing, breath technique, there's not enough that can be said about how essential important it is to be able to breathe deeply, consistently, as a habit and not as an exercise. It's great to do it as an exercise, as an intervention, but it's even better to do it when that's how you usually breathe. Babies breathe from the belly. You see the little tummies going up and down when they're breathing, when they're crying, when they're upset. That's the proper way to breathe. At some point, by the time we reach to adulthood, we unlearn how to breathe that way. So breathing and breath work is huge when it comes to the gut-brain microbiome, because guess what? The brain needs oxygen to survive, right? In fact, you can go without water longer than you can go without air. I think that's a no-brainer. That's just how important it is. And another example of just how important the breathing and air and breathing techniques are, many of you have heard of the Lamaze birthing method. Well, the Lamaze birthing method, and I went through 2 classes, 2 trainings with my first 2 children, it teaches you a certain breathing technique that will allow you to forego pain medication. That is just how powerful breathing can be. So do not rule that out. Look it up. It is absolutely a part of strengthening mental health. There's a saying in the breath world, one of the popular sayings in the breath world that says, so goes the breath, so goes the mind. Which if you're breathing shallowly, you're going to have a shallow mind. If you're breathing deep, it's going to allow you to have a deep mind. So the gut-brain coherence is very, very important when it comes to strengthening mental health. And I hope you can begin to see with all these things that I'm listing how essential these are. Lastly, I want to get into the person, community, and environment coherence. That's what I'm going to call it, person, community, and environment coherence. So there has been a series of longitudinal studies. And some of these studies have gone on for 75, 80 years. And they're literally tracking hundreds of thousands of people to try and determine what is the single greatest determinant of health. Now you might, if I was to ask you to guess and say, okay, what would you guess is the single greatest determinant of health? Well, you might say, I don't know, being a vegan. You might say being a very active person, such as a professional athlete. Some of you may say being very happily married. You know, if you're happily married, the vast majority of your married life together, that's got to be it. Some of you may say you live in a blue zone, and that's going to be it. But it turns out that the single, and those other things that I listed are high, but the single greatest determinant of health has to do with the friendliness and the neighborliness of your environment and the way that you engage that friendliness and neighborliness qualitatively, okay? That turns out to be the single greatest determinant of health. So picture Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, picture Sesame Street, picture these types of things where you go out and you greet and you say good morning, good afternoon, you're able to chat with people over the fence, maybe walk to the neighborhood community garden with some neighbors to get load up on some goodies. Whatever it is, there is a friendliness and a neighborliness about your environment. And believe it or not, being able to be in that type of environment over an extended period of time, I would add chronically, which means consistently, is in fact the single greatest determinant of health. Now guess how that strengthens mental health, right? That's if you're in an environment and everything is not perfect, it's not a panacea, but it's good. It feels good to be there. It feels good to be a part of it. Problems arise and you generally tackle the problems together. You may not solve all the problems all the time, but you come together, you work on it. A few things will fall through the cracks, but overall, you're in a community, you're in an environment, and it feels really good. This goes a long way toward strengthening mental health because it's supportive. You are a valued member in that community. You're seen and heard when you raise concerns. Your compliments are received. You are able to receive compliments. There's a certain element of trust about it. There's a certain element of safety about it. There's a certain element of reliability that you can wake up and pretty much believe that the next day or that day when you wake up is pretty much going to be the same goodness, and it's not going to be some extreme drastic change going on. These things absolutely positively lend themselves toward strengthening mental health. It's all part of it because we're not an island unto ourselves. We need each other. We have mirror neurons in our brains such that when we are looking at someone, and you ever notice yourself, you're looking at the television or you're looking at a movie screen or something and someone is smiling and then you find yourself smiling, mirror neurons are in part responsible for that. That's why they call them mirror neurons. All right, scientists and medical people out there, put some comments down in the chat if I'm off on that one. If I'm off on any of this, by all means. because we want to put good information out there, not misinformation. If I've misspoken on something, by all means, let us know. So whoever is out there, hey, help us out with this and make sure that we stay on the up and up. But the mirror neurons are there and are partly responsible for why we do that. So being in this kind of environment, it feels good, it feels safe, it's familiar, you feel supported, and you feel like people value you. You feel like you can get somewhere together. There's a sense of togetherness that's there, and that absolutely lends itself towards strengthening mental health. Now, back in the day, during the many decades ago, during the Romanian wars, there were so many children, infants, toddlers, older children who were left orphans because of their parents in the war. And unfortunately, in some of the nurseries, there was some experiments that were done which would completely be illegal today, unconscionable today, as it should be. But they were experiments were done on infants in these Romanian orphanages. And one of the experiments that they did was that they wanted to see what would happen if the infants were not given soothing, loving, intimate contact. So what they did was they divided the number of babies in half, so half here, half here. They washed and clothed and fed the babies equally. But one set of babies, they cooed and talked with them and played with them, and the other set of babies, they did hardly anything to them. They just bathed them, fed them, clothed them, make sure they were safe and okay, and that was it. The mortality rate of those babies, even though nothing was wrong with them, if my memory serves me correctly, it's been some time, I think was somewhere in the 70% or something like that, something freakishly high. And it's extremely important research that lets us know just how important community is. Now, my last two children were preemies. My third child was 2 months premature, and my fourth child was almost 7 weeks premature. And I was told by the nurses and doctors in the pediatric intensive care unit, I was told to make sure that I regularly come in to the nursery and make contact with my preemies. And I was encouraged that there's other family members who can come up and visit them, by all means, because having that contact, that emotional, physical contact, that community is very, very important for their life to sustain them. Imagine that. Imagine how critical it is when your mortality rate will go up dramatically as an infant if you're not getting that community, that touch. So the person, the community, and the environment is very, very important when it comes to strengthening mental health. All right, so we've talked about cognitive stamina a little bit. We've talked about psychological resilience a little bit. We've talked about emotional intelligence a little bit. We've talked about heart and brain coherence a little bit. We've talked about the gut-brain coherence. And then we've talked about the person, community, and environment coherence. Speaking of environment, Dr. Zach Bush is among some of the people who is a physician turned farmer. Well, I think he's kind of farmer. He's like a farmer to me. I don't think he would disagree with that. But anyway, Dr. Zach Bush, triple boarded physician. He's now an enormous advocate for organic farming and farming done naturally and in an environmentally sustainable way. He makes brilliant case after case, presentation after presentation, touching on all of these issues and more from the ground up, quite literally. He starts with soil health. He addresses the health and the robust and the vitality of the microbes in the soil and what that means for the health and vitality of your plants and their ability to fight off pests, but then also what it means for the nutrient load in those fruits and vegetables and the leaves and the seeds of those plants we consume, because their soil has been enriched, and so the plant therefore is robust. And he and many others, by the way, makes a very good case that the carrots, the apples, the tomatoes, the cucumbers, the lettuce that we eat today, the green beans that we eat today, are not the green beans and lettuce, tomatoes and cucumbers and apples that our grandparents and great-great-grandparents ate back then. It was a different time. The soil was much richer. They were not using synthetic fertilizers and synthetic chemicals until around the 50s, early 60s. And so these were huge differences when it comes to the environment. So people like Dr. Zach Bush, these are medical professionals who are looking at our psychological, our physical well-being, even in some instances our emotional well-being, from the standpoint of soil and microbe health, and then working up that way into our reality. So again, these are huge when it comes to strengthening mental health. Now I will add something onto here, and that is I found out, and this is a personal example, another personal example. I remember one day I had a herb garden, a flower garden, and a vegetable garden many years before I came to Ghana. I come by it natural because my grandmother, my mother's mother, was a farmer. As long as I can remember, she was a farmer. The farm is still there. The farm is still there. Animals and everything, right? Tractors and everything. And so I realized one day that when I go out into my backyard, I'm always barefoot. But when I go out into my backyard and I work in my garden, I remember how I notice when I'm done, it's as though it just pulls the negative energy out. When I go to work into my garden, if I'm upset, if I'm angry, if I'm scared, if I'm confused, if I'm overwhelmed, and I just think, you know what, let me just get out here, I need to do this, and I start just kind of piddling around. Maybe I'm planting, maybe I'm weeding, maybe I'm composting, maybe I'm fertilizing, or what have you, or maybe I'm harvesting, I'm doing something out there, but I'm always barefoot. I'm always barefoot. I noticed over time that I seemed to really look forward to it. And as I sat and thought about that a little bit more, I realized that it was changing me. It was as though it was a psychological, emotional detox. And when I realized that, I remembered I heard another lady say something similar years earlier. So then I started looking things up online, and guess what I found? I found that it was absolutely true. And what specifically was going on? Something called earthing, or what we call grounding, and of course the sunlight, right? But earthing and grounding. And what this has to do with physically some part of your bare body coming into contact with the grass, sand, gravel, rocks, dirt, brick, certain types of cement on the earth, you're coming into contact with that. And if the earth is negatively charged and we are positively charged, it has an energetic detox type of effect, okay? So this is the electrical system of the body that's going on. So the more research that I did about this and looked into it, the more I realized that the reason why the gardening was having such a huge effect on me was not only just the activity of it, the physicality of it, right? And those of us who've ever been, who are gardeners, know that you can work up a sweat and you can get a little bit winded working out there in the garden. But there was also the sunlight, that's huge. But then there was the electricity part of it. Yes, electricity part. There's a book called Earthing, and it's written by Dr. Sinatra and another guy. I think the guy might be a cardiologist or some other type of engineer or physicist or something. But anyway, this book written by these two men go into detail and document what earthing does, what it does to our body, the protective, the health enhancing effect of going barefoot. And if you're not somewhere where you can go barefoot, if you're not somewhere where you have rubber under the soles of the shoes that you're using, then you can always touch a tree and you're going to be able to get the same effect. And so, but this is huge when it comes to strengthening our mental health, because it has with it the effect, the feel of detoxing you energetically. It has with it the effect and feel of a electrical reset, of a bit of a mental reset, right? I sometimes use a comparison that whenever you're playing a video game and you're able to achieve a certain level and you get that ding, 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 and you get those special coins or those special little tools or this special little icon, and it supercharges you and upgrades you and gives you boosts and more power. This is what earthing is like. This is what being in the sun is like. This is what coming into contact with that soil, the grass, and better yet, if you're somewhere on an ocean where there's a saltwater body, and you're able to stand there, if not in it, somewhere near where it's damp, that salt will actually, the salt will actually enhance or accelerate, I don't know if accelerate is the right word, but enhance the electrical effects of it all. So I guess you could really put that under activity, earthing, right? Because it's an activity. It's something you can do if you're just sitting there, if you're taking a nap, if you're playing volleyball, whatever it is, you're barefoot, you're earthing, and your body is definitely enjoying it. But in addition to that would be the breathing and the breath techniques. Again, you can't emphasize that enough when it comes to strengthening mental health. These things are huge. So all of these things come together, and you may begin to ask yourself, well, my goodness, what do I need to do? When we look at what do I need to do at the end of the day, a lot of it really boils down to things that our grandparents, our parents, depending upon our age, or our great-great or great-great-great-grandparents were doing, right? And what were these things? Okay, these are things like when you come together for a meal, cell phones off the table. Cell phones off the table. We are coming together for drinks, we are coming together for a meal, and we're going to organically engage and enjoy and appreciate each other's company. We're going to organically just be with each other, even if there are periods of silence where you're not really talking and saying much at all. You're going to be in that space with each other. This is what our ancestors did. This is what our grandparents and great-grandparents did. And this is one of the things I did with my children when they were coming up. Even when they were adult children and they would come over for dinner, it's like, nope, we'll turn on music. Maybe we'll turn on the radio if there's some kind of radio drama or program going on, but no TV, and certainly no cell phones at the table. And that was included, and we had a lot of guests over, a lot of adults over, and it was strange to tell adults we don't do cell phones at the table, but we told them, and that's what we did, and everyone came to expect that. So a lot of these things for strengthening mental health is just a lot of common sense thing. Reading a book, reading a physical book, holding a book. It doesn't have to be an intense book. It doesn't have to be a 600-page book. It doesn't have to be a book on unified field theory and physics. It can just be just a general book, but the feel of the book, the activity of your eyes moving back and forth, these are huge when it comes to helping strengthening your mental health, helping to boost the visualization that takes place in your brain. These strengthen certain centers in your brain. This is a good thing. Again, the emotional intelligence. There's some of the latest research out there now, the singular mid-cortex gyrus. So I'm getting that wrong right now because I'm trying to hurry up and force things out when I close, before I close. But there's a lot of research out there now that's saying that when you force yourself to do things that you don't want to do, such as push-ups, such as Sudokus, such as doing a 5,000-piece puzzle, such as going for a walk, you're actually strengthening and building that center in the brain that's going to strengthen and build willpower and tenacity. And in fact, Dr. Andrew Huberman just did a recent podcast on that, and so that's where you'll get the correct name for the brain structure that I completely blew up. I know it's crazy, right? As a psychologist, I probably should know that, right? But hey, we get brain farts, we glitch on stuff. So Andrew Huberman looked that up on strengthening willpower and tenacity, and you'll get that very presentation and that very science and that explanation, and also the how-to and how to strengthen that. But basically doing things, forcing ourselves to do things that we really would rather not do strengthens that. Now, these are things, again, that we did back in the day, right? We don't want to do this, we don't want to do that, but yet, sorry, my earpiece came out, it's an organic presentation. But these are things that really, unbeknownst to us, unbeknownst to the science, went a long way towards strengthening different regions of the brain. When our parents, you come to them with your homework, what does this word mean? And they say, get a dictionary and look it up, right? I don't want to do it. But it turns out that these things were part and parcel toward our health. And yes, I said dictionary. Anybody remember those? Again, old-fashioned stuff, common sense stuff. If you have a problem with someone, go to that person and try to hash it out, right? That act of confronting someone, the conflict resolution skills associated with that, the problem-solving skills associated with that, the interpersonal, the social skills that are being built associated with that. These were the old-fashioned things back in the day that went a long way towards strengthening our mental health. It's part and parcel. So at the end of the day, if you kind of throw your hands up and say, man, this is getting too weird, it's getting too sciencey, and all those kinds of things, you know what? A really easy, quick rule of thumb would be to look back and say, hey, what did my great-great-grandparents do when it came to the types of foods that they eat? Were they eating neon-colored foods? I probably shouldn't be either. Did they have bright lights burning in the night until they went to bed? Probably not. Many of us remember the wind down bedtime kind of thing that went on in our house. And it might not have been a big official to-do kind of thing, but there was a distinct, everybody chill out, wind down, get ready for bedtime type of thing. Well, it turns out that's one of the things that people are recommending for those who have sleep issues, who have sleep problems, and as being able to develop a very relaxing, calming routine before you go to bed. Some people call it sleep hygiene. And guess what? It absolutely lends itself towards strengthening mental health and our being able to strengthen our own mental health and act on our own, as well as being able to help seek in an appropriate way, and not waiting until it's too late or seeking the wrong type of help in terms of illicit substances, foods to comfort us, gambling, and all these types of things. Again, so a quick rule of thumb is just kind of think back and say, well, what did our great-great-great-grandparents do? What did they do when it comes to sleep? What did they do when it comes to dental care? What did they do when it comes to family and coming together? What did they do when it came to friendships? What did they do when it came to community? Hey, I'm coming over to your house to help you paint. Coming over to your house to help you move. Coming over to your house. You know, my children, when they were growing up, were part of a clothing co-op. We almost never went to the store throughout their entire childhood to buy them a bunch of new clothes for school or whatever. We just kept getting huge bags of clothes of all manner of types of things that were amazing, and then we would also pass our clothes along. We wouldn't pass anything and everything along. Those things are definitely usable. But again, that was part of a sense of community, is the hand-me-downs that people were able to get. Bridal showers, baby showers can really be rewired and reworked to be or refashioned to be events that are very communal, and that really go a long way toward help celebrate one another and strengthen relationships as well as build relationships. Again, these things go a long way toward helping us strengthen our mental health. So these are things that I work with my patients in one way or another based on what's going on with them. These are things that I've done in my own life, and these are things that I've experienced that when I don't do them, I pay the price, and when I do them well, I reap the benefits. Life is tough. It is no respecter of persons. And so the important thing is to grab on the skills and the tools and the interventions that we can, not in some desperate free-for-all, but really in a systematic, strategic way to build and strengthen ourselves so that when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Again, I'm Dr. Carnita Groves. I'm happy to be your host for this evening. I hope I've shared some information that has been very helpful for you. Shout out to Dr. Sharita Yazid for making these events possible. Come down and pay a visit to the store. There's a lot of wonderful products here in the store. I've been moseying around and getting up and checking out different things and being really pleased to see some of the things that I've not seen in other places. So definitely come on down to New Earth Health Foods and check us out here in East Legon. Again, I'm your host this evening for Health Watch Thursdays. Thanks for joining.